Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, South Korea, China and Japan have vowed to advance their trilateral cooperation as they prepare for a foreign ministers meeting in Seoul later this month. The nominee to be South Korea's next unification minister says he will push for substantive dialogue with North Korea and look into the possibility of sending a special envoy to Pyongyang if it can boost ties. Plus, Iraqi forces sweep into the Islamic State-held city of Tikrit, launching a double-pronged offensive to squeeze the extremists out of the city. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us, to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, March 12th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, senior diplomats from South Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul on Wednesday to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting in the Korean capital next weekend. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Tangled in historical and territorial disputes, senior officials from Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul on Wednesday in an effort to revive cooperation. Their second meeting in 6 months has added importance since it comes ahead of the first trilateral foreign ministers meeting since 2012.
We have come to agree to host the foreign ministers meeting this month and convened here under the clear purpose of preparing for the meeting.
Korea, as the current rotating chair, has been pushing for a gathering of the top diplomats since late last year. The three-way talks had been stalled mainly due to the territorial row between Japan and China over the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, known in China as Diaoyu. Despite the challenges, Japanese Deputy Foreign Minister Shinsuke Sugiyama expressed hope for the ministerial meeting to lead to a summit.
In a better position to prepare for the upcoming foreign ministerial trilateral to be held sometime latter half of this month, and hopefully to be followed up further by the highest level of us three.
Taking a more cautious stance, the Chinese chief delegate refrained from mentioning such possibility, but acknowledged the importance of the upcoming meeting.
And this progress has not come easily and should be cherished.
But there is little hope that the ministerial meeting will actually break the ice between the three neighbors. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said the top diplomats will strictly be discussing their trilateral cooperation, leaving out the more sensitive historical and territorial issues. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, there's a good chance U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter and Secretary of State John Kerry will pay a visit to South Korea next month. According to Korea-based Yonhap news agency on Wednesday, both Carter and Kerry are planning to visit Seoul ahead of President Park Geun-hye's trip to Washington this year. The report cited diplomatic sources as saying that during his visit, Carter will most likely talk about continuing South Korea-US cooperation to deter North Korean nuclear threats. Eyes are also on whether he will talk about where the US stands on the issue of deploying an advanced missile defense system known as THAAD to South Korea. Kerry is also expected to discuss pending issues concerning both Seoul and Washington while he's here. A senior U.S. Army officer says multilateral dialogue is the key to keeping an unpredictable North Korea in check and preventing any military miscalculations. The remarks follow military talks between the U.S. and China, where Beijing officials are usually reluctant to talk about North Korea issues. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. Army Pacific Commander General Vincent Brooks says North Korea came up in his discussions with Chinese military leaders during his recent visit to China. In an interview with the Brookings Institution's Order from Chaos blog on Tuesday, Brooks said he visited Beijing and Hainan last month and had meetings with China's top generals. but he did not elaborate on what the two sides said about North Korea. However, he did emphasize the need for dialogue between the U.S., China, South Korea, and Japan to formulate a coordinated policy to counter the North Korean nuclear and missile threat. Brooks said the regime's continual provocations and lack of transparency means there's always the potential for a military miscalculation. He added that, given North Korea's unpredictable nature, the Pacific Command remains on a so-called fight-tonight posture, and stressed that U.S. troops in South Korea are always on alert. In regards to the U.S. generals meeting in China, diplomatic sources in Washington say it's unlikely much progress was made on North Korean issues. They note that, in previous encounters, China has been reluctant to talk to the U.S. about North Korea, especially in regards to the North's leadership and internal changes inside the isolated regime. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's presidential office has reiterated its position that no decision can be made about the deployment of a U.S. missile defense system to South Korea because there has been no request from Washington. Experts say the presidential office will likely keep to this stance because talking about it publicly could affect Korea's relations with the U.S. and China. Beijing has been raising concerns about the possible deployment, saying it's a threat to its national security. This follows reports Washington is mulling over sending a missile defense system called THAAD to South Korea to counter ballistic missile threats from North Korea. The nominee to be South Korea's next unification minister says he believes there will be more opportunities to improve inter-Korean relations once the ongoing joint South Korea-US military drills wrap up in April. During his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, Hong Yong-pyo said he plans to push for dialogue with North Korea to address pending issues and improve relations. He added that sending a special envoy to Pyongyang could be one of several options to making that happen. However, when asked about the possibility of lifting the so-called May 24th sanctions on the North, the nominee said that could only happen if Pyongyang assumed responsibility for the deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. Now, these sanctions cut off virtually all inter-Korean trade and exchanges except those involved in the joint Kaesong industrial complex. Several countries have requested the Korean police boost their protection of their diplomatic delegations following last week's appalling knife attack on the US ambassador to Korea, Mark Lippert. Korea's police chief, Kang Shin-myung, made the announcement at a government ruling party meeting on Wednesday and added that extra protection will be provided. Security guards will be deployed even without prior request if circumstances are deemed dangerous. The police chief added that officers are now providing around-the-clock security to Lippert and his wife. Security guards have also been sent to protect the Japanese ambassador.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The flight attendant who was berated for the way she served nuts has filed a civil lawsuit in the US against former Korean Air Vice President Jo Hyun-ah and the airline itself. The lawyers for the flight attendant claim that Jo used abusive language and violence and are seeking compensation for the, quote, extensive damage to her career, reputation and emotional well-being. The flight attendant is also claiming that she was pressured into giving false testimony about the incident to government investigators. Now, Jo Hyun-ah, who is the eldest daughter of the company's CEO, made headlines around the world late last year after making a taxiing plane return to the gate in New York because her nuts were not served in accordance with the first-class manual. Mortgage loans extended by banks in Korea rose significantly last month on the back of a low interest rate and robust home transactions. The Bank of Korea says mortgage lending jumped over $3.5 billion in February from the month before, and that is more than 3 times larger than the average growth seen in the month of February between 2008 and 2014. Hyundai Motor is reportedly planning to build a new factory in the United States to meet growing demand for sports utility vehicles, SUVs. The company hasn't confirmed this, but industry sources say the plant could have the capacity to produce up to 300,000 SUVs each year. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
Hyundai Motor will reportedly build a new production plant in the United States as cheap gas prices coupled with the economic recovery is driving demand for SUVs in the U.S. market. Total SUV sales in the U.S. spiked 15% in the first 2 months of the year compared to the same period a year ago. Hyundai's popular Santa Fe model saw a 20% hike in sales to over 16,000 units during the same period. Industry sources tell Korea-based Jeonap news agency that Hyundai has finalized plans to build a new plant solely dedicated to its SUV lineup this year, with an eye on starting production in 2017. Hyundai currently has just one plant in the U.S. that only produces sedans. The sources say the plant located near Hyundai's current Alabama plant will have an annual capacity of 300,000 units. With 2 more plants planned in China and another currently under construction in Mexico, all with the same capacity, Hyundai and Kia Motors' combined total production output should top 9 million units by 2018, with overseas production accounting for 60% from the current 55%. Hyundai, however, has declined to officially confirm the report, saying nothing has been decided yet. Such a move could be seen as going against the Korean government's push to beef up facilities investment at home to boost domestic sentiment and job growth. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea is making moves to expand the nation's food export items to the global halal market following President Park Geun-hye's recent visit to the Middle East. To help local food firms comply with Muslim dietary laws, Korea has set up a new R&D agency devoted to this specific task. Our Park Ji-won reports.
The world's Muslim faithfuls follow certain food restrictions. For example, they don't consume pork of any form, alcohol, and animals that are not properly slaughtered under Islamic law. Permissible food is labeled halal, as halal means allowed in Arabic. And in an effort to expand the nation's food export items to the global halal market, a new halal food agency will begin operations on Thursday under the Korea Food Research Institute. The agency will focus on analyzing halal food standards in diverse Muslim countries like the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia, and provide the nation's food manufacturers with guidelines on how to produce and develop halal-certified foods. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs says the establishment of the Halal Food Agency is a follow-up measure of a recent MOU between Korea and the United Arab Emirates to promote cooperation in halal foods. The Agriculture Ministry hopes the MOU and the newly launched Halal Food Agency could help domestic food exporters make easier inroads into the global food market by targeting some 1.8 billion Muslims. The worldwide halal food market is estimated to be around 20% of the global food market. And since the late 2000s, many domestic food manufacturers like Nongshim and Pulmuwon have exported some of its food items, such as instant noodles and snacks that earned halal certifications. Korea aims to double the nation's halal foods exports from some $680 million last year to over $1.2 billion by 2017. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's zeal for education is very well known around the world, but that exuberance has put a tremendous amount of pressure on kids here. Despite this, many Korean children say they actually feel physically healthy, but experts worry about the long-term consequences of this stress. Our Connie Kim reports.
Korea is well known for its high education fever, but its school children feel highly pressured to succeed in the academic world. A report by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs measuring Korean children's academic stress shows more than 50% of children in a 2013 survey scored a 3 or higher out of 4 on the academic stress index, higher than the global average. The index accounts for elements such as children's preschool enrollment and academic achievements. While stress typically takes a toll on a person's health, the report says this isn't the case for Korean children. When asked about their health, an overwhelming 97% of the children surveyed said they believe they're in good or average physical health. The research conductor says these seemingly contradictory results reflect the unique Korean characteristic of enduring hardship and the high priority on education.
In Korea, admission to a prestigious university is considered an important milestone. I believe this widespread perception partly shapes students' ability to endure stress and feel physically fine.
Psychologists, however, worry that children do not feel the need to relieve stress. That, if left unchecked, could lead to various side effects, such as violent behavior or addiction.
There are generally 2 ways of relieving stress: calming yourself down or letting it out. For children, it's important that parents acknowledge their stress levels and help them let it out.
Writing in a journal or taking the time to enjoy a hobby are recommended outlets, but psychologists say these are just a band-aid on the problem. What's more important, they say, is for Korean society to reflect on its values. Whether that's loading kids with homework for academic success or raising kids that are both physically and mentally healthy. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Thursday morning in Seoul. For that, we connect to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark. Now, Iraqi military forces and militia appear close, very close to taking back Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit after launching a swift strike through the city on Wednesday. Reports say the joint Iraqi forces and Shia militia entered Tikrit through 2 fronts, from the north and the south. Forces on the ground laying down heavy machine gun fire were backed by helicopters in the air. A local official said troops raised an Iraqi flag over Tikrit's General Hospital, as others suggested that many IS fighters had already fled the city in advance, dressed as civilians. In an apparent retaliatory move, the city of Ramadi, capital of the Anbar province to the south, saw 13 suicide car bomb attacks near army and security positions. Pro-IS Twitter accounts said one of the suicide bombers was an Australian teen. Meanwhile, in the latest IS propaganda video purportedly showing the murder of an Israeli Arab captive, reports say the militant featured could be the half-brother of French jihadist gunman Mohamed Merah, who shot dead 7 people in a 2012 strike in southern France. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls had said on Sunday nearly 90 French citizens have died fighting with IS in Syria and Iraq. And the Chechen suspect who had confessed to being involved in the shooting death of Russian opposition politician Boris Nemtsov has apparently given testimony under duress. That's according to a member of Russia's Human Rights Council who had visited Zaur Dadayev in prison. Andrei Babushkin had said he spotted wounds on the man's body that showed Dadayev had been tortured with electricity. He urged someone outside of the ongoing investigations to look into it further. Dadayev is one of 2 men who have been charged in connection to the shooting death of Nemtsov on February 27th. Now, if you were unable to download some media from your iTunes account or Apple's App Store, you were not alone. Apple has confirmed intermittent outages of its popular music purchasing site, saying that both iTunes and the App Store were unavailable for all users as of 10:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Apple's system status page also said that there were problems with iCloud sign-ins and iCloud Mail in the hours before that, citing the error to an internal DNS error at Apple. full. The unusually extensive outage left users locked out for more than 8 hours in some cases, costing the company millions of dollars in lost sales.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Korean national football team as manager Uli Stielike held the year's first technical seminar on Wednesday to break down the 2015 Asian Cup in Australia. Now, using just 6 sentences, he broke down each match that the national team played in, including the final match against Australia, where he stated that the team that made more mistakes on the pitch lost the match, and that was Korea. Now, he added that they should be happy with their second-place finish in Australia, but try to improve their weaknesses through that experiences. Meanwhile, he also explained why he chose the previously unknown Lee Jung-hyuk, saying that his movement in penetrating the defense was his reason. Now, one of the reasons why two-time Olympic speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa shut down her season early was because of fatigue, but apparently she's not the only one. It's the entire Korean speed skating team. Now, with the ISU World Cup Finals set to start on the 21st of this month, the Korea Skating Union stated that none of the Korean speed skaters will participate in that event due to fatigue. Now, it's the first time that the entire team has decided not to participate in the final despite earning their tickets. Meanwhile, Lee Seung-hoon will still win the overall men's match start gold despite his lack of participation. Now, while the Korean speed skaters can rest a bit, the Korean ice hockey team will need to speed up their preparations for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games as the tournament format was confirmed. And with the latest format confirmation, top 8 ranked nations will get tickets to the group stages, while Korea will receive the 9th ticket for being the host nation. But it won't come easy for Korea as they're set to face off against the 1st, 6th, and 7th ranked nations in the group stages in 2018. While the other 3 tickets will be fought via 3 stages of qualification games starting in November. And now finishing things off with the 2014-2015 KBL playoffs, where the Incheon Elephants took on the Seoul SK Knights in Game 2 of the best-of-5 series on Wednesday, hoping to get a nice 2-0 series lead. But what do you know, SK Knights, even without Aaron Hayes due to an ankle injury, take an early 25-20 lead after the first quarter, but Incheon rallies in the second quarter, take a 43-37 lead going to halftime. But a big third quarter for SK, outscoring ET-Land 21-10 to take the lead back. But check this out. Fourth quarter of the game with SK up by just 8 seconds left on the clock. Ricardo Powell, that's a Kim Yeon-ah spin and the eventual game winner as Incheon takes a 2-0 series lead with a 76-75 victory. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. The cold eased a bit yesterday afternoon, but we are waking up to another freezing morning today. It feels like -7 right now here in Seoul, so dress warmly on your way out. And the daily highs will be similar to slightly higher than yesterday. And mostly to partly sunny skies will dominate the whole peninsula, but beware that the dry weather advisory is still in effect across much of the country, including here in Seoul, so drink water frequently and apply a good amount of cream to stay moisturized. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The daytime high here in the capital will climb up to 7, while the top temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju will be quite pleasant, topping out at 13, and Busan will climb up to 12 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 12 and 11 respectively, and Dokdo rises to 4. But that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a wonderful day and stay tuned to Arirang. Goodbye.